Hello, class. Today, last time we looked at the autonomic uh, nervous system, which is the component of the afferent nervous system that deals with the cardiac muscles, the glands, things like that. This time we are looking at the somatic nervous system. So, unlike the autonomic nervous system, which deals with smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, and glands, this one deals with the skeletal muscles. So, when information goes from the brain or from a central nervous component, it goes to the skeletal muscle rather than the smooth muscle, cardiac muscles, or glands. So, what happens here at the somatic nervous system? So, the first thing that happens is, let's say, the brain receives some sort of sensory input and will then send signals or synapses onto the upper motor neuron. After that, it will send synapses back to the central nervous system component, in this case, the spinal cord. So, when it is then sent from the spinal cord, synapses will then be sent onto the lower motor neuron, eventually reaching the effector, the component of this somatic nervous system that will act upon due to that stimuli, which is the skeletal muscle. So, not cardiac muscles or glands or smooth muscles, but skeletal muscle. Let us look at three different type of movements which is involved here with the somatic nervous system. The first one is what we would call the reflexes. So reflexes are basically it's composed of things such as the spinal and postural. And reflexes you can think of like your knee jerk reflex when you tap your patellar ligament and your feet will like move up or it will do a little kick. So basically, if we look at, let's say, the spinal reflexes are the simplest of the bunch, and here it is receiving sensory input from your muscle spindle. So yeah. And then you have your postural, as the name suggests, it is for maintaining balance and posture. So for example, like with the if you look at various reflexes or reflexes that obviously prevents you from, let's say, falling down, let's say when you step on a nail, so there's a reflex for that. So this requires sensory information from our proprioceptors, so like muscle spindles, the eyes, the inner ears, things like that. Okay, so for the postural reflexes, you could think of what we would call as the flexor withdrawal. In this case, let's say you step on a nail, and this will obviously cause your leg to retract. So obviously, it's going to, stimulate our receptors, their touch, pressure, and pain. And that's an example of a reflex which helps with postural. So when you step on a nail, you would obviously move it away, and then you will have the cross extensor reflex to then help you balance. So postural, so cross extensor, reflex, and flexor withdrawal. You can think of those two reflexes helping you balance yourself when you step on a nail and you basically move your leg like this and then your feet like that. Let's say this is the nail, right? So you can think of the flexor withdrawal here as you are withdrawing from the nail, and the cross extensor, which is an example, the cross extensor, of this postural for reflexes. And then we have things such as voluntary reflexes. The voluntary reflexes are actually the most complex. And the thing with the voluntary movements, not reflexes, sorry, the voluntary movements, is that it doesn't require external stimulation. So you don't need some sort of stimulation from your touch receptors and so on in order to, in order to have a voluntary movement. Okay, so if we so oops if we look at the voluntary movement, you can think of, let's say you want to go to the mall, you want to go somewhere, or you want to eat somewhere. There's no external stimulation that is required to act on the voluntary movement. And then you have rhythmic movements. Rhythmic movements, basically, you could think of like walking and running, anything that is basically repetitive, right? Walking and running, when you are walking, right, your legs are repeatedly going up and down, step, then step up, so on and so on, like this stick figure that is running. It is a combination of voluntary, so when you walk or run, it is voluntary, or it is also a combination of a reflex. You can think of the fight and flight response. When you see something scary, whoa. So yeah, you could think of rhythmic movements as a combination of voluntary, so on your own will, and a reflex, because technically your legs, you know, moving is technically a reflex in some way. So I hope that gives us simple introductory to the somatic nervous system, which is a component of our efferent nervous system, the one that deals with sending signals to act on an effector. And in this case, it is with the skeletal muscles. See you in the next video.